All right, guys, working on a 2000 Jeep Cherokee. Just wanted to show you guys some of the connections for the dashboard and the HVAC box. So let's get right down to it. So I replaced the heater core and the evaporator on the inside of this box. So you have to split the box. So we'll go over that first. Basically, all this stuff over here, this harness has to be unplugged and pulled this way. You have to peel this piece of foam back and basically take the fan out and all that stuff for the case to separate there. So this clip you just have to slide off. Basically you just need to slide it downwards. This clip here, I just pinched the little gray kind of clip down in there. There is a couple vacuum lines. You have to remove this green vacuum line here, which goes to that guy there, and there is a little kind of like cup shaped thing that holds it. You got to pop it out of that. All right, and then the only other vacuum line you have to remove is this. Then you have two clips, one here and here. I did lose one of those. And then you got just a bunch of little screws. So there's this one here for the evaporator, or the heater core actually. There's this one. Don't forget the ones in these little pockets. There's a couple in just random spots here, there, and everywhere. So get all those out. You do have to peel a couple pieces of foam back like that. Like I said, one for the fan, one here. And I think that's pretty much it. And this thing should just pop apart. All right, so as far as this thing coming out of the Jeep, you have 5 screws. So, or I guess 5 nuts that you have to take off these studs. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I believe those are 11s, 10 or 11s, one or the other. Then the box is actually pretty simple to get out. You've got just a couple connections. I believe there's only like 3 connections. So the vacuum lines, this guy here, and then there's this hole on this kick shield right here. And there's a little clip, a Christmas tree clip that holds a white plug that you have to pop off of that. So let's see, take one last look around. Obviously you do have to disconnect the heater core lines and the AC lines. But as far as this goes, that's pretty much it. There's really nothing else to disconnect. So let's go over to the Jeep and take a look at what we have on that side of things. So on this end of things, out here in the engine bay, a couple things that need removed. Like I said, the AC lines, the heater core lines, which this has a loop in it right now. Your studs are here, one down there. Let's see, there's basically a couple on here. There's one hidden down in here. And you can see the holes in the firewall where the fan and the heater core and AC evaporator come out. So that's basically all that's done there. I did disconnect some connectors here just so I can move this wiring around so it's easier to get to the bolt that's down in there, because that's a pretty tight spot. On the inside of the Jeep, things are actually a lot simpler than what you would think. You've got a handful of bolts that go all the way across there that hold the dashboard on. You have these 2 bolts here and here, and then you have a couple bolts here and here, and then a couple here and here that go into the dashboard, and maybe I can show that to you guys in a minute. So as far as connectors go, this was that white clip I was talking about with the Christmas tree clip that just needs popped off of the HVAC box. You have the antenna, and then you have this connector here. Quick little side note here, guys. So this small white connector actually does not need to be disconnected. It just goes to this cream colored terminal block. So yeah, that's one less thing that you guys will have to worry about. I disconnected it because I thought it needed disconnected, but it turns out it does not. So all those need disconnected, as well as the green connector here. This is to the green connector on the HVAC box. And that's pretty much it for this side. Continuing on to the driver's side, there's a handful of things over here, but again, nothing that's too overwhelming. So You have a SRS plug, you have this plug here, you have 2 plugs here, and then let's see what else. The steering column. There is one other thing I wanted to point out to you guys. So this little tan and brown box that you can see right at the end of the brake pedal shaft there is actually a little gray connector that plugs into that. When I was putting the Jeep back together, I wasn't sure where that gray connector went, but it goes in that brown and tan little box there. So just wanted to point that out. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 connectors, and that takes care of the entire driver's side for connectors. So there are 5 connectors total that go to the body of the Jeep. Now, there are just a couple other things that go with the dashboard that you have to disconnect. So the steering column has to be pulled. So to get that out, there are a handful of connectors and a harness that goes up along the steering column. That stuff has to be taken off. As you guys can see in this picture here, it's the circled wiring that has that kind of like corrugated mesh wrapping around it. So basically the steering column harness has to be disconnected and undone from the steering column. Speaking of the steering column, while we're on this subject, there are just a few things for it. One of these things that has to come off is this gray connector, which goes to the hand shifter. So as you guys can see, that goes to the steering column, which it's hard to see in this picture, but it's the aluminum shaft. You can see the key there, and then the steering wheel is just out of the frame of the picture. But this gray thing that I'm talking about is just a cable. It's a safety cable or a shifter cable of some kind. So that has to be undone. And there's one other 13 millimeter bolt for the actual steering shaft itself, which we'll go over that a little later in the video. And that's pretty much it for the driver's side. Now, of course, to make it easier or to get this thing out of here, you do want to remove the center console. Center console's super easy to remove. Just got a couple little screws here and there. The handle for this just pops off of there. You just yank it off, and that's pretty much it. 4-wheel drive lever, probably just pull it all the way back. That's the best position to pull everything out on. Quick little side note for you guys. So for the main shifter and the 4-wheel drive shifter, the 2 little covers that go over those, they just pop out. It's just clips. So very simple, just pry them out of there. This is your bracket that I was talking about that goes here. So 2 bolts here and here, and then 2 on the unibody transmission tunnel there. All right, so here's the dashboard. Like I said, it looks a lot more intimidating than it really is. So like we talked about, you have 1 connection here, the 2 big ones over there, and then the SRS sensor connects here. So there are just 2 or 3 more things that I wanted to point out here. So this is that little gray connector. This is the one that goes in the tan and brown box at the end of the brake pedal shaft we talked about earlier. So that has to be unplugged. There's also this little white connector. It's part of the steering column harness and, of course, the steering column harness. Once that stuff is done, the driver's side is completely disconnected as far as wiring goes. Okay, that's it for the driver's side. And, of course, you have your bolts. The one on the bottom, 2 in the middle, and then all across the top, okay? So over here on the passenger side, this is your vacuum line that connects to the HVAC box. You have the antenna here, which you can access through here once you take the glove box out. Steering column is pretty easy. You just have 4 bolts for the steering column. So there's 2 up here on this bracket, which you're going to be looking at this stuff from underneath. But if you find this spring, there's 2 bolts here as well. And then you have the shaft, which has a bolt that goes through that, you need to undo that. So basically 5 bolts, and the wiring harness for the steering column needs to come off. And don't forget about the safety cable, the gray safety cable here. It also has to be removed, and the steering column will come out. So not too big of a deal. All right, so as far as trim pieces to get down to this point, it's pretty simple. So for the trim pieces, you basically got clips or screws. There's only a couple things that screw on. So you have the glove box, you have the driver's side knee protection, the metal part, and the plastic cover. Both of those have screws. There's the main bezel that goes over the gauges and kind of goes towards the radio and HVAC control area. That has a couple screws in it. And otherwise, everything else pretty much just pops in and out with clips. Glove box is pretty simple. It's got 2 rubber things here and here. All you're going to do is halfway open the glove box, pull those down. The glove box will flip out basically, but you do have a couple screws. These pieces that kind of go on the side here have like an 11mm sheet metal nut. So that nut is up here, same spot on driver and passenger side. There's the top of the dashboard trim piece. It's super simple. Basically, it just pops up at the front and then pull it out towards you. This looks like a lot, and yes, it does take maybe a couple hours or something, but it's not a bad job to do, not terrible. All right, guys, so to close this video out, main reason we took the dashboard out was just for the AC evaporator. We also did a heater core, did a handful of other things like the accumulator, fixed some stuff in the engine bay, including vacuum lines, some wiring. We have a loop in the radiator, so the heater core doesn't get clogged. We also put a new 4-row aluminum radiator in this thing. So a lot got done while we were doing this work. We got everything working very well. AC is working super well. One of the things that needed fixed was the vents weren't working properly. That was due to the vacuum lines out there that needed replaced. But that's it overall. Like I said, AC is ice cold. Couldn't be happier with this job. It was a decent bit of work, but well worth it. So that's going to be it for this one, guys. I hope you enjoyed watching. I hope you found this video useful. If you did, don't forget to rate, comment, and subscribe. Check out that description box below, and we'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace.